Everyone turns a blind eye to the deep, dark pits. Those high above, in the shining city of Metrix, would soon wish to forget it existed, and those who crawl around its fetid and polluted streets are too busy trying to survive another day. The pits are a series of tunnels beneath the mechanical wonder that is Metrix. It is the price that is paid for digging too deep, the toxic stain left behind by unwavering mechanical progress. The bedrock of the tunnels were carved away by mining corporations, letting natural underwater streams and rivers run free, only to be churned up with chemical waste. The water is black and oily with chemicals. Cobbled together lamps point the way to shelter and danger alike. The city's buildings and streets built from the waste that falls from on high. One of these lamps barely illuminates the sign of the Blackjack Tavern, where inside the owner, Greenbird, laughed in the face of the pinstriped man. "I don't remember inviting you into my tavern," spoke Greenbird, his voice dark and sarcastic. The pinstriped man pointed his mechanical arm, ornate and powerful, around the room. His goons were loitering around, leaning on whiskey-stained stools and drumming their fingers on the bar counter, copper fingers against dark oak. "My tavern," he said, and stepped closer to Greenbird. "Allow me to introduce myself. I'm known round these parts as the Harvester, head of the arms dealers, and now owner of the Blackjack Tavern." Greenbird cursed in his face, and Harvester laughed, as thick and oily as pit's water. It filled the tavern, echoing all the way up to the rafters, where Azealia waited, the arrow in her bow dead straight, the slightest glint of the metal tip catching on the light. The arms dealers were known for taking the arms of their victims, replacing them with mechanical, doll-like miniatures. Harvester looked Greenbird up and down, sizing him up. "I've made a lot of arms before, but I doubt I've ever made someone a wing. Been thinking about it a lot, actually. What do you think? Wood or copper?" Azealia kept perfectly still, bow trained. "Copper," she thought to herself, and as she breathed out, the first man fell.
You do what you have to do, and you take what you have to take to get by in the pits.
"Get lost, Squeaker. This ain't a charity." The young Azealia held out her hand. The girl's arm was scrawny and slim, gaunt with hunger, but in the middle of her palm shined a dark red talic, a single copper coin. As a girl, she'd know the only way to rise out of the gutter was to earn money. The Blackjack Tavern was her chance to do that, a place where contracts could be claimed, with bags of talics for those who carried out the job. She'd lived her whole life as a squeaker, a dirt-poor urchin living off scraps of food and slivers of good luck. A lack of either was fatal. Before her was a chance of getting off the streets. Behind her, the putrid water of the Black River bubbled. The men at the door simply laughed in her face. Then, one snatched it out of her hand. She was too slow. He took the coin and flung it over her head. It landed in the water and sunk without a trace. "Look here, you pest. You aren't allowed here." Azealia barely hesitated. She turned, ran, and dove headfirst into the water. The black liquid rushed into her ears, blocking out the laughter. She quickly came up for air, choking on the stench, and her eyes stinging, red like fire. Once more she went under, her hands scratching at the riverbed, and the riverbed scratched back, rusty nails and cracked bone ripping at her fingertips. The third time she went under, she felt the grab on her ankle, pulling her down. Her fingers, frozen cold, barely managed to grab a piece of glass. She slashed at the thing that pulled at her and broke free. And yet, again, she dove once more for the single copper piece. She knew the touch of it at once, the smooth against the silt and sharp. Finally, she pulled herself back ashore, the ice-cold talic held so tightly it would have hurt her if she was not so numb. Worth a try, she thought to herself. I'll find another way. She'd find a way. Anything. to get her a contract from the Blackjack.
In the pits, every nook, cranny, and demolition debris serves as worthy refuge when it's time to take cover.
When one of the harvester's men grabbed hold of Greenbird's shoulder, he began to wheeze. Greenbird felt the grip loosen and looked down to see the arrow shaft sticking out of the man's chest. Blood dripped from his mouth as he hit the floor. 2 more arrows flew out from the dark, hitting an arms dealer in the temple and throat in turn. 2 more fell before the rest took cover, the rapid shots of Azealia striking them before they could even turn to hide. One of those who made it to cover was not hidden well enough. A bright orange streak flew into him. His screaming filled the room, and his clothes, dank with mechanical oil and grease, erupted into flames. Then Azealia kicked open the tavern door, drawing the eyes of all who had been searching desperately in the shadows and rafters for a sight at the killer. Her face flashed in the lantern light, orange-hued by the dancing flames of the burning man. She pulled back her bowstring and fired 3 arrows in quick succession, 1 arrow apiece for 3 scumbags in kind.
Everything has its price in the pits. If you don't sell it, there's someone willing to take it from you for the right price.
The young Azealia approached the door of the Blackjack Tavern, barely paying a glance at the 2 bouncers from before. They were now slumped on the ground, drugged up by a double dose of whiskey and a wax-sealed vial, hand-delivered by a couple of squeakers a few moments ago. She darted in the front door and tried to mingle with the crowd. She knew what she needed to find, the contract board. "You lost, kid," came a voice. The crowd had parted to let him pass, and now he stood staring down at Azealia. He was dressed in green, his hair a mess of brown. She told him she wanted a contract. He looked her up and down, then chuckled. He asked her what experience she had, and laughed cruelly at her answers. "All right, I got a job for you." The card appeared in his hand, and he pointed it towards Azealia, who eyed it up. The illustration showed an upside-down silhouette, 5 arrows piercing its chest. Azealia didn't understand what it meant. "Get some kids running around here, young ones, on the streets. The patron wants someone to collect them. Just take the kids to the Wharf house at the end of the docks, push them in the door and close it behind them. Patron wants at least 10, but will pay a bonus if you can manage 15. Azelia's first response was shrill, but she composed herself. What for? Greenbird trotted out a few explanations before laughing again and slapping his thigh. "Who cares, kid? It pays 15 coppers. Bonus is another 10. It might not be that bad," Azealia thought to herself. "Maybe they're just looking for workers. Dock workers get fed. It's got to be better than living on the streets." She tucked the card into her waistband and left the inn, now a contractor of Greenbird's Blackjack Tavern. They die all the time anyway. This is no different than starving, or drowning, or freezing. I need this more than them. If she'd half drown herself for a single copper piece, what would she do for 25?
Finally, time to take out the trash.
Harvester was the only one left. Ace to king, 13 cards, and there were 13 arms traders slumped on the floor. That left him the joker, cowering behind the bar. He breathed heavily, panting. Then he jumped up from behind the counter, his gun in his hand. The arrow pierced his skull. Then moments later, his head exploded, the arrow detonating and sending his grey matter flying around the room. Greenbird wiped the blood from his face. Human skin dangled from his outfit, the green now matched by crimson red. He glared at Azealia, who raised a single eyebrow at him. "Using me as bait? Really?" Azealia said nothing and held out the contract card to him. On it was drawn a mechanical arm. He cursed, then went behind the bar. A pouch of coin landed on the counter, filled up with 10 silver pieces. "There's your coin. Now get these bodies the hell out of my tavern.